For a full-hour interview. This is John Bray's Charlie Kirk investigation, his fifth or sixth extended interview with Stu Peters in the last 9 months. John Bray's findings and revelations were first introduced to the public on the Stu Peters Show, and they have since become a mainstream topic among independent investigators, podcasters, and influencers. This is Stu Peters and John Bray for Tuesday, July 7th, 2026.
Directly tied to the exploding microphone and making that theory go viral is John Bray. John Bray was first on this program, I believe it was on October 9th, which would have been the day before Accurate Energetic Systems blew up. 23,000 pounds of explosives blew up the following day. The plane, almost exclusively used by Pete Hegseth, tail number 99-0404, flew over that scene, reducing its speed, reducing its altitude on a leg from Fort Huachuca. Imagine that, going back to Joint Base Andrews after arriving from Joint Base Andrews on Fort Huachuca that morning. Something else that happened that day was the 10th Mountain Division was completely disbanded after 3+ decades, over 30 years of overseeing the Joint Task Force Southern Border Command. They lost their command HQ status after just getting it 4 months previous to that, along with a big promotion. So a lot of things obviously happening around Fort Huachuca and then in eastern Tennessee with Accurate Energetic Systems, which, by the way, otherwise known as AES. AES fulfilled a $440,000 DoD contract for what was called anti-personnel micro-explosives, just ahead of Charlie Kirk's public murder. So John Bray, who has been doing, just really doing the Lord's work, actually. This guy has been doing excellent work, and his analyses online just keep on coming. Now, the one that he posted yesterday is what he's here to talk about today, the sound that killed Charlie Kirk. In between the mock cone and the muzzle blast, John Bray says he has isolated this frequency, which has a rise time 5 times faster than a ballistic impact and originates from under the tent. There is no explanation for this frequency other than an energetic event from underneath the tent. And then, of course, the analysis is here in slow motion with what appears to be thermal imaging over the top of that. And John Bray is here to explain all of this to us. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you being here.
Pleasure. Thank you, Stu.
Yeah. So what are we looking at here in your recent analysis, which analyzes the sound of an energetic event that you say came from underneath the tent?
Yeah, so basically you're hearing the audio of that frequency that originates underneath the tent. And this audio is caught by all the cameras that are close to the tent. And there's 6 cameras, basically array around Charlie, almost 180 degrees. And every one of them captured the same exact frequency. And the visuals is a heat mapping where it's basically, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, there's a legend, a round circle, and that's telling you the direction of the pixel movement. So those colors each represent a different direction of movement, and it's made to give you kind of a depth perception from the limited viewpoint of a 2D camera view. But you can see how violently the right side of the shirt moves from the front to the back to his sleeve, the whole area around the right area of the shirt basically experiencing violent movement that's within milliseconds, pushing the edge of what the cameras can actually capture. That's a 60 frame per second camera, and the movement was so fast that it couldn't even capture it all. So this is beyond explanation of a cavitation event. We see no flesh cavitating. There's not a single camera that was recording Charlie that day that sees any flesh cavitation anywhere other than a slight bulge on his neck. So, that's completely out of the question that the shirt was moving because of his flesh. We would see the flesh moving. The shirt can't move, without the flesh causing it to move. And then the area is the opposite side of his body. So, just to think that impact to the left side of his neck, which is basically just soft tissue, is going to cause a massive movement on the right side of his body, violent enough to snap his necklace and send it up and over his head. is just beyond ridiculous. It's usually just ignored, or if it is explained, it's explained very poorly because there's no good rational explanation for it. And so what I've noticed is when they don't have a good rational explanation for it, they just ignore it, and they go back to the few key details that they have, and even those details they misrepresent. So the whole case is built on allowing people to infer the truth when there is no real actual truth to a 30-06 impact to the neck. There's no forensic analysis that you can make that says there's one detail that matches with a high velocity impact to the left side of his neck. And we do have the signatures of a mock cone passing over the crowd. There was a shot that day, there's without a doubt, and we have the muzzle blast that comes over the crowd too. And that's a double-edged sword for them, because that gives us the exact data that we need to reverse the same order operations of that muzzle blast going over the crowd. Each one of those cameras captured the muzzle blast. The timing in between those cameras tells you the distance of the cameras in between each other as that sound travels past. That same math can be reversed and used to triangulate the area of the low frequency event underneath the tent, and they match perfectly. So, the false event of the rifle, the ruse rifle shot provides us the very data we need to really prove that there was a high energy event that occurred underneath the tent. And most importantly, that high energy event times perfectly with the shirt movement. It's around 5 to 10 milliseconds after the mock cone passes is when we see the most violent shirt movement. We see Charlie's physical reaction, and all this times up perfectly with the low frequency event underneath the tent. So we have a visual data that shows us that the movements that we see that can't be explained by a 30-06 impact line up perfectly with the audio data that we have of a high energy event from underneath the tent. You combine that with all the evidence we have that the microphone case basically suffered catastrophic failure right at the moment where the necklace breaks, then the only conclusion you can be left with is that high energy event that we see displaced in the shirt, that we see in the audio, was directly tied to the microphone. And the fragmentation we see from the microphone, the movements of the magnetic clasp, and basically the only thing that's left of the microphone is the magnetic clasp and the clip left to his shirt. And we have evidence of that. We can see as Charlie moves after the event, there's no longer a bulge underneath the shirt. The microphone's 44 millimeters by 44 millimeters by 18 millimeters. It's quite a large body that was underneath the shirt, and it's completely missing after this necklace breaks. It's a very small mass that's underneath the shirt, so small that it can fold over on itself, turn 90 degrees, and we see no bulk of the case turning underneath the shirt anymore, when it was very apparent the whole day. So, it's just undeniable when you add all these things together. We don't have to ignore facts when we analyze this through the viewpoint of trying to explain it through the microphone. But when you try to make a 30-06 impact to the neck, fit the narrative of the facts that we see, that narrative just has to ignore so many different elements of the event we witnessed that at some point you have to realize that it's being shoehorned in there. The only thing that we have evidence of a 30-06, event is the sound of the actual shot. There's nothing else there.
And where did that shot come from?
It definitely came from the distances that they say. So I believe that the roof area they say that shot came from is most likely where that shot was taken. But that shot did not impact Charlie. There's no frequency of an impact there. We don't see any evidence of a high velocity impact on Charlie's body anywhere. So you have to have a cause and effect, right? We have the cause, but there's no effect from that cause. So at some point you have to just really write off the rifle shot as a secondary event. It didn't have anything to do with the actual a lethal event that happened to Charlie. Was completely, the rifle shot was just a ruse for it. It happened in and around